Hello, everybody. This is Tom Eckert here. You're listening to my podcast, Numerology, a GPS for the Soul. This is your place to learn about the true power of numerology and how to use it to bring out the best in yourself, understand your loved ones better, take wise decisions, and prepare for your future. In other words, how to live your life aligned with your true destiny. Take your time to educate yourself and share these podcasts with your friends and family so they too can enjoy the great benefits of numerology. Enjoy! Hello there, and welcome to all my listeners. Today, we are having a deep dive into one of our numbers, namely 7, and what happens when we have multiple 7s in our chart, excessive 7 energy. We've already covered a few numbers prior to this one. We covered number 4, number 3, I think also number 9. We're going to keep going, and this time it's number 7. But before anything else, hey, if you're new here, welcome to my podcast. In this podcast, which is all about in-depth numerology, we discuss numerology as a path for spiritual growth, dharma, inner transformation, self-knowledge. And I, as a numerologist, attempt to make this unique and magical science of numerology accessible, applicable, and grounded so you can use it to provide clarity and grounded, skillful means to apply in your everyday life to make your life better, more conscious, aligned with your deeper truth, with your soul's purpose. Now, if you want to experience numerology on a deeper level or simply have a deeper knowledge, a grasp of numerology, there are 2 things I want to share with you. First, you can book a numerology reading with me. In a numerology reading, you can ask any question that is burning in your life and get precise answers, be it career, vocation, relationship, destiny, trauma, sexuality, whatever, name changing, naming a newborn, forecasting the future, understanding the past, and so on. You can read more about all my readings and how this all works through my website and contact me to book your reading. The link, of course, is in the episode description. Now, if you wish to study numerology on a deeper level, or possibly even pursue it as a career or take it as a secondary tool to what you're already doing, I am inviting you to check out my numerology study paths. First and foremost, check out my self-study numerology courses that give you the rare opportunity to learn numerology online at your own pace. My library of courses currently includes 2 self-study courses, one of which is one of a kind, never to be made before, and more are upcoming. Now, if you want to study in-depth numerology and be really initiated into the rare depths of numerology, you can sign up to my complete path of certification, where you will study directly with me one-on-one all the way from beginner to numerology expert and get certified as a professional numerologist. To read more about both study paths, check out the links in the episode description. As you've probably already heard in previous episodes, when a number repeats itself multiple times in your core numbers, it most probably will lean into its shadow side. This is mostly the case when the number repeats itself 3 times or more in your core numbers and becomes especially strong if these 3 repetitions take place in your sacred triad, namely your life path, your expression, and soul urge numbers. No number is exempt from this predicament. And today, we will explore what happens when number 7, the deepest number of all, appears multiple times in your core numbers and starts to shift into excess and therefore inevitably into its shadow side. Number seven, generally speaking, is someone who relies on their own inner knowing. Their aloneness and autonomy is very important to them. And by connecting to their individual power, aloneness, and personal space, they find clarity, insight, and energy. This is how they rejuvenate themselves. However, as more and more sevens occupy your core numbers, leaving little space for any other balancing factors, namely other numbers, aloneness turns into a kind of a distant aloofness. A person can feel very removed from others, tend to isolate themselves, and also send a sort of both overt and covert message to the world of sort of leave me alone. This can be done consciously or unconsciously. Just this feeling of I just want to be by myself. So they can be rather quiet people, reserved, and not easily approachable. Eventually, that can turn on them as they create a sort of desert like atmosphere around them, allowing no one in. And so it goes both ways. This form of aloofness is both them being hard to approach, but also them feeling distanced, not being able to form a connection with others, with the world. And this naturally leads to the next point, which is loneliness. I remember mentoring a person years ago with multiple sevens, both in their core numbers and period cycles. They literally told me, Tom, people always leave me. They don't even want to get close to me. Maybe they're scared of me. I'm living in a desert. This is literally what they said. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like all sevens want to be lonely. It's not about that at all. It's simply built into their energetic makeup to tend to create distance between them and others, sometimes without even knowing how this is actually happening, which of course leaves them baffled and sometimes very sort of like um, a bit desperate because it doesn't feel good and they're not clear what is the unconscious mechanism that makes it happen. So this can definitely leave them perplexed and bogged down because from their perspective, they actually want a deep and meaningful connection, which is true for sevens, but they find themselves rather hard to make friends with or come close to. Now, please remember that I'm describing a more rare occasion in this episode of three or more sevens repeating in a person's core numbers. So this is surely not always the case, right? But part of seven's karma, even as a single number in the chart, is to confront or to be confronted or to encounter and get acquainted with, deal with the energy of loneliness. It's part of their learning curve in how they discover the deeper layers of their being. So, if that's already the case with 1 7 in the chart, imagine what it can look like with 3 7s or even more. Definitely not easy. I think we can agree on that. Now, what I'm about to say right now will probably surprise you. But some people, as a reaction to their multiple sevens and their implication, right? The repercussions basically of living with such an immense and intense and heavy energy will quite literally turn their back at their core chart. In this case, they'll turn away from the sevens. This is basically an attempt to not suffer the shadowy destiny of the seven. They may fear being alone or being abandoned, as we'll see later, or perhaps even afraid of the depth of their own subconscious. And so, as a reaction, they will behave like another number. I personally know someone who has 3 sevens in their chart. And before knowing their chart, I knew them as the ultimate, family person. I was sure they have a strong, very central 6 in their core numbers. But when I checked their chart, to my utter surprise and shock, I discovered 3 sevens. And I was completely perplexed, but then it dawned on me, right? What I'm sharing with you right here. When we talked it over, I explained to this person the whole situation in their chart, and they confirmed that their entire life they were scared to death from abandonment and goodbyes. How unbelievable is that? And so naturally, they converted, of course, quote unquote, because we cannot fully convert, right? Into a 6. In their case, other people might convert to something else that will feel more safe to them. But to this person, it felt safer. And in general, when I say turning away from the 7, it's simply because it feels safer. Now, of course, as I said, no one can fully, quote unquote, convert, but you can to a certain degree until you feel ready to embrace the real potential of who you are with all its repercussions, good and bad, so to speak, pros and cons, the entire thing. Now, having many 7s can also cost you in energetic and emotional heaviness. Energetic heaviness means lacking energy and motivation. One can be somewhat lethargic and lazy. It can feel hard to get oneself to move or do things at times. It's as if something is pulling you down. Again, right? Let's remember 7. Every number um, acts out on many different levels. And you can always sort of extrapolate from its own base energy on so many other levels. 7 is heavy and multi-layered. 7 is very deep, but that depth has also a heaviness. It pulls you down sometimes. It can pull you deep, of course, into wisdom, but the shadow, as we're speaking about in this episode, right, pulls you down. Now, emotionally speaking, this can feel like a general heavy mood, even a slight depression or negativity and sadness that are simply regular companions. Sometimes, in some cases, the depression can be deeper, heavier, but generally speaking, a sort of like a fragrance of depression, sadness, heaviness, negativity can be regular companions with multiple 7s. Life can feel somewhat daunting, as if you are pushing against heavy weights all the time in order to get ahead. So, generally speaking, multiple 7s contribute to a heavier mood, possibly more pessimistic, and also finding it difficult to let go of negative emotions. And this is important to remember. 7 is very deep. And even though it sort of tries to avoid sometimes the emotional domain, it can't fully avoid it. Things touch the 7 very deeply. And because of its nature, because it is so deep, because it is so naturally inquisitive, because everything penetrates on so many levels into their being, it's simply harder for them to let go of things that are difficult, of negative emotions, in other words. other words. Now, just to reiterate, please remember that in these episodes about this phenomenon of recurring numbers in a numerology chart, I'm intentionally pointing out the most difficult sides. But this in no way means that there are no positives. For example, to having repeating numbers. This is just not the topic of this episode. In these episodes, I'm purposefully and intentionally speaking about um, the excessive side of things because I want you to learn what that looks like, right? So it's just that, by definition, three or more numbers of the same kind in our core numbers will bring out more of the shadow, not only the shadow, but also more of the shadow. And as aspiring numerologists, all of us, we should know about this very important phenomenon. Next thing I want to talk about is sevens and anxiety. But before I keep talking any further, if you are enjoying my podcast and you want to keep learning in depth, high quality, and applicable numerology, make sure to click the follow or subscribe button on the platform you're listening from. Make sure to turn on the notifications bell and become part of my numerology community. Also, make sure to check out the comment section, especially on YouTube. I'll explain why, and leave a comment on an episode you liked. Feel free to share your thoughts, become part of the conversation, even ask me questions. It's your opportunity to connect with me directly. I always attempt to answer as many comments as I possibly can. The best way to comment is on YouTube because YouTube allows you to comment and me to answer and to our conversation to keep going as opposed to other platforms. You can also comment on Spotify, but it does not allow for an ongoing conversation. Okay, my friends, on we go. Anxiety. We can't speak about excess 7 energy without mentioning fears and anxieties. Needless to say that such a deep number, like 7, who basically exists on the very edge of the known all the time, sitting right there on the cusp, on the edge of the matrix, touching the beyond, sometimes things can get pretty spooky. Okay? And this is an understatement. Speaking as a 7, okay? I have, just for you to have some context, I have 7 life path, I have a 7 soul urge. So that's in my sacred triad. But then I also have like a 7 in my maturity number. That's not completely identical to 3 sevens. It's more 2 sevens and a bit. But I know what a lot of 7 energy is. Okay. Now, so it feels like you're sort of treading in places that most human minds would consider very scary, unsafe, undesirable to be in. Just better turn away and get away as far as you can from those places. Now, amplify this feeling by 3 or more, and you get the point, right? Multiple 7s can definitely suffer from anxiety disorders, and fear is usually a very regular companion. So, my 7 fellow friends, just, accept your life, accept yourself. In a way, it's the price they pay for all the depth that they so naturally embody. Just imagine going so deep into the ocean's waters where there's no light and it's a totally untrodden territory. What will you discover there? It feels scary. And that is often the feeling that multiple 7s live with. Right on the surface of the ocean, it's all sort of like, okay, it can be sort of wavy and stuff, but you can still see the skies. You might even see the land. Your part of your body might be also, still standing on land and outside the water. You dive deeper, there's still sunlight. The water is still blue. You dive deeper, okay, it gets a bit more mysterious, but sort of like this turquoise color, a little deeper. You still see some interesting, um, forms of life. But then at some point, it goes deeper and deeper, and it gets darker and darker until it gets like pitch black, and it's just a mystery. And that's in many ways what sevens experience. And for that reason, sometimes it's not for any particular reason, but simply because there is that unknown inside of them, and we are conditioned to be afraid of that, there is a sense of anxiety. There's simply a sense of anxiety that accompanies the life of a seven. And it's, in a sense, considered a shadow, but they're also meant to go through this anxiety and discover the depth of the unknown. And we'll speak about that further soon. But really to get comfortable with it. Now, I mentioned fear of abandonment earlier, so allow me to say a few words about it. Now, if you listened to my episode about the 16-7 karmic debt, and if you didn't, definitely go ahead and do so, you'll know that it's already a shadowy expression of 7, and it suffers from fear of abandonment. But in another episode about how to find difficult karma in one's chart, I also mentioned and explained that one way of detecting karma in a chart is by spotting recurring numbers in the chart, namely 3 times or more, as we're mentioning in this episode. In other words, having multiple sevens, the topic of abandonment will be strong. You will either fear it tremendously and therefore never really bond all the way with others, right? Sort of remain aloof, right? That aloofness that we spoke about, because it also feels safe, and remain lonely because it feels safe. Or you will do what I described earlier and quote unquote convert yourself into another number that will promise and guarantee always staying connected, never abandoned, right? You'll convert into a 6 or into a 5 or whatever, something that is always in touch with others. You will do everything to hold on to the people around you in order to not experience abandonment. And this person I described earlier does exactly that. And it's very interesting to watch. This is also tied to the topic of aloneness. In fact, everything is connected to everything here. It's always beautiful to witness. In the end, 7 is meant to love its own aloneness, but on the way there, they must confront their deep fear of it, the deep fear of being alone. Interestingly, aloneness eventually is all oneness, right? You discover that at the very root of your being, there is oneness. It's all oneness. There is one, only one. That's the dharmic revelation of the 7. And that's why they need to cross through that aloneness. Another famous fear of multiple 7s is that of their own subconscious. Because they are so deep, and if you think again about the metaphor of the deep, dark ocean, because of their depth, there's this feeling of, oh, who knows what's lurking in there? It's dark, it's scary, and I can't know. Maybe there's some terrible things down there. That's pretty much the feeling of the 7, and certainly that of multiple 7s in the core chart. They have such a deep and multi-layered inner world that it can sometimes feel overwhelming. And because as a humanity, we are all conditioned to fear that which we don't know and can't control, the 7, being the deepest of them all, suffers the most from these fears. You see, 7s can't help it but touch these depths again and again and bump into this terror from time to time. With time, though, they should learn to befriend the unknown and live at peace with that which they can control. It's simply part of their destiny and eventually their deepest wisdom. Now, lastly, I want to speak about criticism. Any seven knows what I'm talking about when I say that we sevens are pretty darn judgmental. It's inherent in the structure. Deep thinkers and seekers of truth are naturally also critical thinkers. And as an like inescapable fate, this also plays out as excessive criticism and judgment. Multiple sevens can find themselves bitterly or arrogantly judging the world or people, and sometimes not managing to find that place of softness, of compassion to see other people's good intentions and efforts. It's indeed a hard one to tackle, as sevens by nature also feel outcasted and alienated. So sometimes criticism and judgment of others is simply their most immediate, most sort of default or comfortable refuge to make themselves feel safe and eventually worthy. But in the long run, they should practice softening their hearts and reducing the levels of judgment and increasing the levels of seeing others for their true depth and beauty. And part of that will happen by melting away the walls around their emotional vulnerability, not pretending to be something that they are not, to be more than I am. Admit the pain, admit the fear that's going on there, admit the hurt, and grow from there instead of protecting it, putting a band aid that looks like criticism and judgment. So, as you can see, and as very much befits the deep seven, their topics are heavy. But with deep potential come deep shadows. That's simply the way it goes. Eventually, nothing is static, and it's not like you will remain like this forever, unless you really insist to. We all have all the necessary tools to mitigate the shadow sides and strengthen the light within us. We have what it takes to transform ourselves and polish our numbers into their true shining potential. So, bottom line is keep learning, keep doing the work, keep growing. And of course, before we wrap this up, if you have enjoyed this podcast and you want to keep supporting my work, keep learning high quality numerology, make sure to subscribe, make sure to follow, and turn on the notification bells on the platform you're listening from. Become part of my numerology community, my friends. This is a growing community, amazing, amazing place to study numerology. And remember to check out the comment section, communicate with me, leave a comment, be part of the conversation, share your thoughts, ask questions, share ideas. It's an opportunity to connect. And as I said, I will attempt to answer all the comments. Best place to do that, my friends, is on YouTube, as it offers an ongoing conversation in the comment section. You can also do that on Spotify, but there's no ability to keep talking. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. This way, we'll always stay in touch there. Now, don't forget to check out my professional numerology readings. A great way to get to know how numerology works, especially if you are considering deepening your numerology expertise. And check out my self-study numerology courses, my course library for self-paced studies, and also my in-depth numerology certification studies where you can be initiated and acquire deeper mastery of numerology. All the links are in the episode description. My friends, it's been such a joy to share with you this episode, as always. I wish you well, and I'll see you as always in the next episodes. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, and you want to go deeper into numerology, check out my website, tom-eckert.com. You can also book a numerology reading or even study numerology yourself through my courses. I'll see you in the next episode.